Good morning, class. This is Dr. Mike Moran, your instructor for IT 140, Intro to Scripting with Python at Southern New Hampshire University. Today I'm going to talk about lists and dictionaries, and specifically, I'm going to talk about how to pack and unpack lists and dictionaries. These are ways to manipulate lists and dictionaries because knowing how to do this will help you with your game you need to submit at week 7. So let's start with a list. This is pretty simple, and I'll provide all this code here in one of my announcements so you can actually just copy the code and then practice it yourself. So let's start with a very simple list. This is a list I've called colors, and it has 4 different strings inside of it. 4 different strings for different colors, yellow, magenta, cyan, black, etc. So if we print this out, you're going to see just those 4 values. But you can take a list and you can assign the values of a list to variables like we have here. So if I run this piece of code, I'm setting 4 separate variables equal to the contents of this list. And as you can see, I can print them out as we do right down here. No big deal, no surprise. Let's use something called packing. I'm going to pack multiple values into a variable. And so look at what happens here in this case. We're going to go ahead and set C and M equal to the first and second elements of our list accordingly. No surprise there, we did that earlier up here. But now, using the asterisk character operator, I'm going to go ahead and say put everything else in this list after the first and second elements, put everything else, pack all those into this variable here. All right? So if you look at these two lines, they're not that different in that I am taking the elements of this list and assigning them to variables in the first example, which we already did. In the second example, we're doing the same thing, but now I'm just saying specifically put the first 2 elements into variables C and M specifically, and then everything else into this other variable. And watch what happens here. We are essentially packing, right, this information. When we print this out, look what happens. So first and second like before, but now everything else is packed into this variable called other. And as you might expect, since this is a list, in fact we can, if you're not sure about that, you can just type, call the type function, yep, it's a list. And because it's a list, as you know from your list work you've done earlier, you can look at the individual slices of a list and see what we get. So obviously, if other contained yellow and black, then other index 0 should be the first one, and other index 1 will give us the second one. Does that work? Yes, it does. Watch, let's see. So there you go. So this is an example of packing values into a variable. Well, is there such thing as unpacking? Yes, there is. So we're going to go ahead and I'll just comment all this out, and we'll run this next chunk of code right here, where I'm going to say, again, we use the asterisk, right, operator. Now this has nothing to do with multiplication, and same thing up here. There's nothing to do with multiplication, although this is used to multiply numbers, but we're not multiplying in this case. You can use this operator for packing and unpacking, and here we're going to go ahead and unpack. And so we have that list with 4 colors in it, right? And if I just say print this, watch this, by itself, what do we get? We get what you expect, a list of items. But if I unpack this, what do we get? Now we get the actual strings. We don't have a list anymore, right? This is a way, using syntactic sugar, which is a nice easy way to do things in a programming language. Syntactic sugar, I'll let you look that up on your own. Makes things easier to read and express. This syntactic sugar gives us a way to just print the contents of a list very easily without having to iterate through anything or manipulate the list or the underlying object directly. So for lists, we're not having to manipulate the list directly using subscripts, right, like we did up here. Instead, we use syntactic sugar, the asterisk, to unpack the contents of a list.